Imagine a toy so realistic it was accused of leaking classified military secrets. That's just one chapter in the incredible story of the company that put plastic model kits into the hands of a generation, a legacy that eventually it's found surprising home across the ocean. At its peak, Revell sold more plastic model kits than any company in the Western Hemisphere. By 1956, over 80% of American boys built models, and the kits that introduced most of them came out of a factory in Venice, California. The Venice plant is gone now. The molds were crated and transported to Illinois in 1986. The name still appears on boxes, but those boxes now ship from Germany. If you built models as a child, you remember the distinct smell of polystyrene cement and warm plastic, a kitchen table covered in newspaper, a pair of nail scissors repurposed for service, and the promise of a battleship that could sit on a bedroom shelf for $2. 98. USS Missouri kit was so detailed that Admiral Rickover accused Revell of leaking classified submarine secrets to the Soviet Union. Lou Glaser, the company's founder, masterfully turned that scandal into an advertisement, yet the hobby eventually began to wane. The afternoons once dedicated to a tube of cement and a sheet of decals were now spent elsewhere. Revell changed hands 7 times in 30 years, each new owner holding the name a little more loosely than the last. In April 2018, the company that pioneered American plastic model kits ceased all operations, selling its entire legacy to a German investment group for $3.9 million, less than the price of a house in the very neighborhood where Lou Glaser built his factory. This is the story of a man who transformed surplus plastic and used machine tools into a cherished childhood institution, and of the decisions that, piece by piece, broke its foundations apart. In 1943, Louis H. Glaser, an entrepreneur residing in Venice, California, established a plastics molding company called Precision Specialties in Woodland. Its first contract job was reportedly injection-molded parts for a small shrinking machine. Glaser had arrived at a fortuitous moment. World War II had left Southern California abundant with 2 crucial assets for a man in the plastics business: cheap surplus raw materials and second-hand machine tools that no one else wanted. He acquired both. Early products were modest, including HO-scale train sets at a 187 ratio featuring locomotives, freight cars, passenger stations, a farm group, and utility buildings. The kind of items found in a 5 and dime store selling for pocket change. Glaser marketed these under a new brand name, Revell, reportedly derived from the French word Revell, meaning awakening. The train sets sold, but not quickly. Glaser was primarily a contract manufacturer who happened to make toys, not a toy maker who happened to own machines. This distinction was critical. He understood tolerances, cycle times, and the cost per unit of polystyrene resin, but what he had yet to grasp was what would compel a child to walk into a Woolworths and choose one box over another. He was about to learn. In 1950, English toy designers named Gowland offered him a licensing deal for a set of miniature vintage cars. These cars had flopped in Britain, but Glaser believed they might fare better across the Atlantic. He placed them in Woolworths for 69 cents each, and they sold. The Gowland cars didn't just sell. They sold at the first run, then the second, then the third, eventually spanning 4 series of 30 miniature vintage automobiles at a 1/32 scale. Each was small enough to fit in a child's palm, and inexpensive enough that a parent didn't have to hesitate at the register. Glaser then made a decision that appears obvious in hindsight, but required a specific kind of nerve at the time. He reviewed every other product Revell made, the train sets, the contract molding jobs, the miscellaneous toys, and discontinued all of them. By 1952, every product line that wasn't a plastic assembly kit was gone. One factory, one category, one gamble. The first kit to emerge from this focused strategy was the USS Missouri, not a toy car but a 1/535 scale replica of the battleship where Japan signed its surrender in 1945. Revell packed it in a narrow box and shipped it to hobby counters nationwide. 3 aircraft swiftly followed: the F-94C Starfire, the F-7U Cutlass, and the F-9F Cougar. Each came with Revell's signature globe base for desktop display, a small plastic pedestal that transformed a child's bedroom into an airfield. In Chicago, a company called Monogram Models took notice. Monogram had been crafting balsa wood kits of wartime planes and ships since 1945, establishing itself as the premier name in American model building. When Revell began consuming their shelf space with plastic, Monogram swiftly pivoted, releasing a bright red plastic race car called the Racer and abandoning balsa wood for good. The two companies spent the next 3 decades in fierce competition. Revell released a jet, Monogram released a bomber. Revell launched a ship series, Monogram responded with a destroyer. This arms race unfolded in hobby shops and five and dimes across the country, and the only beneficiaries were the children who couldn't decide which box to pick up first. By 1955, Revell introduced the distinctive S logo, a yellow letter within a red oval stamped on every box end. Collectors now refer to this period as the Golden Age. The box art from this era, featuring hand-painted illustrations of gleaming aircraft and churning warships, is today traded like fine prints. These paintings were not mere decorations, they were promises. A 14-year-old standing in a Woolworth's aisle was looking at the finished object he could build with his own hands, provided he possessed the patience and the 69 cents. Revell was building something beyond a product line. A generation of American boys was learning, without being explicitly told, that the true satisfaction lay not in the finished model, but in the building process itself, in the patience, in the slow accumulation of small, correct decisions that transformed a pile of gray plastic into something that looked like it belonged on a runway. Lou Glaser understood this. He pushed his engineers to dedicate thousands of hours to a single mold, knowing that a child who opened a box to find sloppy fit or soft detail would never open a second one. Accuracy was the product. Everything else was packaging. This obsession with getting it right was about to cause Glaser the best kind of trouble. Inside the Venice plant, Glaser's engineers spent up to 7,000 hours researching, testing, and tooling a single mold. They worked from blueprints, technical manuals, and photographs. When blueprints were unavailable, they measured the real thing. Their goal was fidelity at a scale most adults couldn't appreciate with the naked eye, packaged into a box a child could carry home from a drugstore. The company line boasted accuracy to roughly 25 micrometers. For most kits, this was marketing. For the 1961 Polaris missile submarine, however, it proved to be a problem. The engine room detail on Revell's USS George Washington submarine kit was so precise that Vice Admiral Hyman G. Rickover, the father of the Navy's nuclear submarine program, publicly complained. The New York Times ran it on the front page with the headline, "Admiral Rickover says Reds learned secrets from toy sub." Rickover's quote made every wire service in the country. "If I were a Russian, I would be most grateful to the United States for its generosity in supplying such information for $2.98. Glaser could have apologized or pulled the kit. Instead, he dispatched his public relations department into what one account described as combat mode. Revell reframed the entire controversy as an endorsement. If an admiral was concerned about the accuracy, then the accuracy must be real. The kits continued to ship. It was the kind of audacious move that only works when the product behind it is genuinely good, and Revell's product was genuinely good. By the early 1960s, Revell's catalog boasted hundreds of subjects: aircraft, warships, rockets, space stations, vintage cars, custom hot rods, guided missiles, atomic power plants, suburban homes. If it existed in the physical world and a boy might want to build it, Revell made a kit. Glaser had proven that accuracy sold now. He was about to prove that personality could sell even faster. In the early 1960s, Glaser signed a licensing deal with a custom car designer named Ed Roth. Roth was no corporate man. He was a self-taught artist from Beverly Hills who airbrushed monsters onto hot rods and called himself Big Daddy. His most famous creation was the rat Fink, a bug-eyed, drooling green rodent conceived as the anti-Mickey Mouse. Revell paid Roth 1 cent for every kit sold bearing his name. In 1963, that amounted to $32,000. The Surfite, a single-seat beach car with a surfboard where the passenger's seat should have been, appeared in the film Beach Blanket Bingo. The rat Fink appeared on t-shirts in every schoolyard in America. Roth gave Revell something it had never possessed before, a personality that lived outside the box. Monogram countered by hiring designer Tom Daniel, whose Lil Coffin Show rod, complete with a plastic skeleton behind the wheel, became one of their best-selling kits of all time. The rivalry between the two companies sharpened into something resembling an arms race fought in hobby shop aisles. Each company tried to out-weird and out-deter the other, inadvertently making each other better in the process. Glaser saw opportunity everywhere. In 1965, he acquired International Raceways and opened a 1,580 square meter Revell Raceway slot car facility in Los Angeles, featuring 6 track configurations. Commercial clients could order full room-size tracks fabricated by Revell for up to $8,000. The slot car craze collapsed within 2 years, plagued by too many competitors and too little staying power. Revell had bet on a trend instead of a foundation, and the trend evaporated. It was the first time Glaser had misread the market. It would not be the last. But in 1956, 9 years before the slot car disaster, he had quietly planted a seed on the other side of the Atlantic, a seed that was now growing roots of its own. In 1956, Revell established a German subsidiary called Revell Plastics GmbH. The first office was in Bielefeld. Within a year, operations moved to the neighboring town of Bunde into a building that had previously manufactured cigars. For 15 years, the German operation merely imported and resold kits designed in Venice. It was a distribution outpost, not a manufacturer. Then, in 1971, the Bunde team developed its first original product, a 1/8 scale BMW R75 motorcycle. Designed in Germany, tooled in Germany, and sold under the Revell name, it was conceived without any involvement from California. The subsidiary continued to build. Throughout the 1970s, Revell Germany acquired mold tooling from defunct British manufacturer Frog, expanded its distribution network into Eastern Europe, and developed its own research and development pipeline. By the mid-1980s, Bunde had its own design department, its own production facility, and its own product line that operated outside Venice's direct control. The child was becoming the parent, and the parent was running out of time. Back in California, the hobby was contracting. The Atari 2600 had launched in 1977. Cable television was multiplying the channels competing for a teenager's attention. The generation of boys who had built Revell kits in the 1950s was now raising children who preferred screens to sprues. The afternoons were vanishing, and Lou Glaser could read a sales chart. Around 1980, Revell was purchased by General WWII, a French toy conglomerate also known as Seiji. The logic was European expansion. Revell had the brand, and Seiji had the continental distribution. Together on paper they made sense, but it remained only on paper. Seiji was carrying its own debt, and the acquisition failed to stabilize either company. By 1983, Revell was spun off again. 2 owners in 3 years, with nothing to show for it except a balance sheet that looked worse than before. The broader picture was harder to dispute. The American model kit market was contracting year by year. Hobby shops were closing across the country. The customer base was aging and not replenishing itself. Monogram, Revell's oldest rival, was suffering from the same ailment. A New York investment firm observed that 2 struggling companies in the same shrinking industry could be combined into one company that struggled slightly less. In 1986, Odyssey Partners of New York purchased Revell, having already acquired Monogram models of Morton Grove, Illinois, earlier that same year. The plan was simple: merge the 2, keep one factory, and close the other. They retained Monogram's plant in Des Plaines. The molds that Lou Glaser's engineers had spent 7,000 hours cutting were pulled from the Venice presses, crated, loaded onto trucks, and driven 218 kilometers east to Illinois. The machines stopped. The building emptied. Revell kept its name on the box. Worldwide recognition demanded it. Monogram's identity was absorbed into the brand it had spent 3 decades trying to beat. The rival won the real estate. The loser kept the logo. The new company established its headquarters in Northbrook, Illinois, then later Elk Grove Village. Venice was finished. The California chapter of American Model Building was over. 43 years of manufacturing in one building, closed by a firm whose offices were 3 time zones away. Glaser's factory was now someone else's floor space. What followed was a sequence that tells its own story without commentary. In 1994, Revell Monogram was purchased by Hallmark Cards and folded into their Binney & Smith division. The company that made Crayola crayons now owned the company that made Spitfire kits. In September 2001, Binney & Smith sold Revell Monogram to Alpha International of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Alpha specialized in die-cast collectibles. Roughly a year later, Alpha sold to Gearbox Toys, also of Cedar Rapids, 2 owners in 12 months in the same postal code. In May 2007, Hobbico Inc. acquired the brand. Hobbico was an employee-owned hobby company based in Illinois, with approximately 850 employees worldwide. They also acquired Revell Germany in 2012, reuniting both halves of the brand under one corporate roof for the first time in 6 years. For a moment, it looked like stability, however. Hobbico was carrying too many brands: Axial, Arma, Estes, Tower Hobbies. Revell was just one line item among dozens. Margins in the hobby industry were thin and growing thinner. The RC market was shifting, and the model kit market was still contracting. The roof held for 6 years, then it did not. On January 10, 2018, Hobbyco filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in a Delaware court. Revell Incorporated was listed among the debtors alongside Estes Rockets, Tower Hobbies, and Great Plains Manufacturing. On April 13th, Revell USA ceased all operations, production stopped. Shipments of already packaged kits were halted mid-transit. Boxes that were sealed, labeled, and ready for hobby shop shelves remained on warehouse pallets. The same day, a German investment group called Quantum Capital Partners won the rights to Revell with a bid of $3.9 million. This sum secured the trademarks, the molds, and selected assets. The name that had introduced a generation of American boys to the satisfaction of building something with their own hands. In July, the case converted from Chapter 11 to Chapter 7, initiating full liquidation. A Facebook post from a hobby retailer served as the closest thing to an obituary, stating, "It is a sad time for the model building community, and that Revell USA has in fact closed their doors. Revell still exists, the kits still ship on Saturdays. The Bunde facility on Daimlerstrasse opens its doors for a factory outlet, where customers can buy discontinued items and second-choice stock at a discount. Star Wars kits sit alongside reissued Bismarck battleships and three-dimensional puzzles. Revell USA now operates as a warehouse and a small marketing office. Its function is to import kits from Germany and forward them to regional distributors. All ownership, all product development, and all decision-making now occur in Bunde. The company that invented American plastic model kits is now, structurally, a German import brand with an American mailing address. Many of the original American mold tools from the 1950s and 1960s have been reissued, retooled, or scattered. Some reside in Eastern Europe, others in Chinese contract factories. The Venice originals, the ones Glaser's engineers painstakingly cut over 7,000 hours, are dispersed across a supply chain that spans 3 continents. The steel remembers the shape. It does not remember the address. A brand is not a company. Revell's name Veven ownership changes. The company that gave the name meaning did not survive the first one. A name on a box is worth exactly what someone will pay for it in bankruptcy court. In this case, $9 million. A subsidiary remembers what a parent forgets. Revell Germany started as an importer operating out of a cigar factory. It now owns the entire brand. The child that was given autonomy outlasted the parent that took it for granted. What you build at the edges can outlive what you build at the center. Hobbies do not die, they emigrate. The American model kit industry did not collapse because people stopped building. It collapsed because the companies that served them stopped investing. The hobby moved to where the commitment was. It moved to Bunde. Lou Glaser started with surplus plastic and used machine tools in a Venice workshop, building something a child could hold in both hands for 69 cents. 80 years later, the company he founded still puts his name on the box. The box just ships from a different country now.